Welcome into the I-80 Boys College Football Podcast. As always, I'm your co-host, Old Chunt, and then that old geriatric-looking fuck right there, that old chode twister is.
I guess Chris. I'm not Chunt. Shit, man. No, how's it going, Christian? What have you been up to, brother? It's Friday. Are you drinking anything? That's a real question. It's Friday.
Fuck, yes, I am. To start the show off, we've got a little bit of Woodford Reserves, a little bit of double oak, some bourbon over here.
Oh, nice. Fucking high roller. It's when you make those big bucks like Christian. You get to do that kind of shit when you're a poor white piece of trash like myself. You get to drink some Busch Light. That's what you get. That's all you can afford.
Nothing wrong with a little Busch Latte over there, man.
Nah, hell no, man. Hell no. Happy Friday also, Children of the Corn. Good to see you back, buddy. Hell, I think we got a pretty good show in store today, Christian. What are we going on here? What's going on? What are we doing? Where do you want to take this today? Are we going to talk about Georgia Bulldogs like usual?
How that goes. I mean, I normally don't like to bring them up. You know, it's kind of like you normally do the bring it up for me there. You know, you live vicariously through me, I like to say. Right?
Yeah, I do. You're the younger, better looking version of me, as you always say. So.
Yeah, man. I mean, we'll kind of keep it light here. You know, be sure to comment there, and you know, we're going to do our pregame warm up, obviously. So we'll talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. I mean, whatever team. We talked about Busch Light for fucking 25 minutes. I don't care.
Well, we could. I know it's that Anheuser-Busch product, though. I know you're not all about that. That's why you switched over to that bourbon. Am I wrong?
Man. That was part of the reason why. You know, I had to go to Target today to pick something up, and it was a super Target, so I think I'm safe. You know what I mean?
I thought maybe that's actually where you're employed, pushing shopping carts around. But hey, that's a different topic for another day. What you do with your personal life, Christian. No, it's good, man. If you guys got anything, drop it in the comment section. Though, other than that, man, everything's been good over here, Christian. I'm ready to fucking go, though, man. Like I keep saying, every goddamn podcast, I need some football in my life, man. Whether it's NFL or college football. I know we're a couple months away. I don't know, probably less than 95 or 90 days, probably 85 days. Hell, I don't know where the hell it's at, but it's coming up, man. I'm just excited, dude. I'm sure you are too, man. I'm sure you're excited to see where Georgia's going to be this year. I know I am about the Cornhuskers. In Matt Rule. Actually, be honest with you, I'm actually really excited to see a lot of these teams that, you know, have a lot of hype already in the offseason. Florida State, God, dude, I can't turn on a channel without hearing about Jordan Travis, or Colorado and Deion Sanders, right? I mean, God damn, you can't go a day without hearing about those guys. Even Ohio State being over here in the Big Ten, man, Jesus, everybody's hyping them up too, though. Old Ohio State faithfuls out there, you know, parading around talking about national title this year. Should have beat you guys last year, that type of shit. But no, I'm ready to go, man. I'm really ready to go. I don't see any other comments here, but I'm ready to get it going, man.
Yeah, man. Like you said, I mean, I'm excited to see what Nebraska does this year. I think I've been more optimistic about them than you have, and maybe even some of the fan base has. But I'm really excited. This is a weird part of the season where I feel like, you know, we put a lot of stuff out there and we say a lot of things. And a lot of people, a lot of fan bases get really fired up and pissed off, right? Because right now everybody's 0-0. Nobody's won, nobody's lost. So there's a lot of Florida and Auburn fans that are not, you know, fans of this show that think their team's going to win a national championship this year. And hey, all I say is good luck.
Well, speaking of Auburn fans, man, I got fucking roasted last week. Jesus. I mean, damn, dude. I guess when you're, you know, Vegas total 6.5 wins for the season, and you call them mediocre, I guess that's not enough. I guess I'm going to have to start changing my thinking, Christian, and saying 6-5 is legendary. You know, I don't know. It means you're competing for a SEC title apparently over there. I just know Georgia seems to win 12, 13 games every fucking year, but
last year we won 15 of them.
Is that what yeah. Well, shit. You know what? 6.5 ain't even half of that. So that's still better than mediocre in their eyes, I guess, man. I got roasted over there, bro. I'm a little butthurt about it, to be honest, man. I was like, damn, I thought I gave them a fair assessment.
I think some of them were getting kind of roasted over there too, you know, for one of those comments. Don't too bad. Well, Chris, you know, let's kind of jump into it here. So the first thing we're talking about on today's show is some of the FCS schools, man, could be on the move up to the FBS, with all this conference realignment and what have you. I mean, for me, it's really interesting. There's an article that came out, back in December talking about 10 FCS schools are going to, reportedly make the jump. They're going to kind of form their own conference. Let's see. Schools include Stephen F. Austin, Abilene Christian, Utah Tech, Southern Utah, Tarleton State, Austin P, Eastern Kentucky, Central Arkansas, and North Alabama. Of course, also, at the end of this, we'll kind of talk about who we want to see, in the FCS level make that jump. Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
I think overall it's a good thing, Christian. I do. I mean, you can't knock schools for wanting to play, I guess, what I call the big boy league, right? You get in there, you see a lot of it. Like I can make this comparison to college basketball. There's like I swear there's like 300 teams in D1 in college basketball. Obviously not near as many players on a basketball team that there is a football team. So it's a big difference. School funding, how big your school is. There's a lot of parameters that go into this. No, I think it's a good thing, man. A lot of shifting going on in college football. Anybody that's, unless you're fucking new to football, I mean, there's teams shifting around all the time. Texas, Oklahoma next year going to the SEC. I believe this year Jackson State, Sam Houston State joining the Division I scene. So there's teams. Things are going to be moving around constantly. I think it's good. I don't knock these schools, man. You want to play in the big boy league, right, Christian? I'm sure you played JV for a year, maybe in high school. Maybe you didn't because you were 400 pounds and playing that defensive tackle, Jared Lorenzen on offense. But my point is, I played JV my freshman year, only year I played JV, but I couldn't wait to make it to or varsity, right? I mean, that was the big boy thing, and that's kind of the way I compare this, man. I don't knock these schools. I think it's a good thing for college football. Get their names out there. I'll be honest, I didn't know Tarleton State was even a fucking school, dude. So like, I know it's a good thing overall, man. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, though.
Dude, I always love it. Children of the Corn brings up a good point here. He says, what's the conference name going to be? The Sisters of the Blind Conference. I mean, that's perfect. Look, when I was in high school, actually, I was in middle school. We played a team from Alabama that was School for the Deaf, the Alabama School for the Deaf. And I think they beat us, man. I'm not trying to say anything negative, but you know how bad that was? Jesus Christ, that was a little rough back in those days. But anyways, getting back on to the better point here, right? Thank God. If we'd played the School for the Blind, we probably would have gotten murdered. Look, I like it a lot because, I mean, you're getting some of these teams to kind of move up the ladder and be able to compete at the highest level. The other reason why I like it too, Chris, is, I mean, it's really tough for a lot of these schools to kind of recruit and hang with some of these big dogs. But I mean, it could be good for the Division I level to get some new talent and to get some new blood in there, right? I mean, just to get some of these new programs. I mean, again, it's been a while, but I mean, you think about it, the Cincinnatis of the world that were,
oh God, yeah.
App State, Georgia Southern, some of these schools were FCS schools. I mean, not even all that long ago, really. But for me, you kind of touched on it loosely when you were talking about basketball, right? I mean, you think about college basketball, it seems like every year in that tournament, there's some no-name school comes out of nowhere, and they end up making a run in the tournament. Now, obviously, football is different, but it would still be really cool to see, one of these smaller schools kind of take that step forward. I think, of these schools that we've listed right here, Chris, I think a couple of them can make some noise. I mean, the biggest thing is, the biggest thing to me is, Chris, is there anybody that you think that's going to make that jump up that can compete right away?
I was looking at this list before you even brought that up. Central Arkansas, Nebraska's played them in the past. Northern Alabama, I know they've had a program for a while there. Stephen F. Austin, man, I know in basketball, actually, relatively, they've been around, and they're not a bad school there. Unfortunately, this isn't basketball, though. This is football, totally different sport. I don't know if I have one team, but I would say out of those three that I just mentioned wouldn't surprise me. Even Eastern Kentucky. I mean, anywhere down south, I guess, and I mean, a majority of these schools are from kind of around down that area. You're going to get talent, dude. You know what I mean? You're going to get a kid maybe that high – let's for example, 4-star recruit, like Tyreek Hill, right? Hey, you get booted out of a D1 school, and I know these guys are coming D1, but they decide, hey, you know what? I'm going to go to Northern Alabama for a year. I mean, this shit happens all the time. It's no different than JUCO, right? I mean, Nebraska recruits a shit ton of JUCO players, and it's usually a lot of kids that were really highly recruited. There's a bunch of them in Kansas, a bunch of JUCO schools that they play a year or two there. They get their shit together. Usually it's either grades or they got in trouble or drugs or any of that kind of crap. This could be kind of something like that too. I could see it being that way, and I could see some of these schools maybe getting some of those types of players, man, because even though they're going to be maybe, D1 here, not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. It's good for the schools, dude. I want to see more schools involved, dude. Like you said, basketball has a boatload of fucking D1 schools. Like you said, the tournament every year, not even one anymore. There's usually like 2 or 3 that win a game that nobody's even, heard of. Like, God, I can't even think the one from Chicago a couple years ago. They made damn near a Final Four run. Like, there's always schools like that, and I think it's good for college football to expand a little bit, especially with all the moving pieces and parts going on right now, Christian. I don't have it, like I said, not to answer. I can't answer your question exactly, but I would say Central Arkansas. I know we played them. Northern Alabama, I know, is always on somebody's market every year. They're playing them, a big name team. Even Stephen F. Austin, man, I truly think down there they got kids. I mean, they got kids that can play down south. We all know that. That's the recruiting hotbed. Georgia knows that better than anybody.
Yeah, listen, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, to me, when I look at this list, I think the teams that will have the most success right off the bat is probably going to be Abilene Christian, Austin P, and Central Arkansas. I do think Austin P, I lived in Nashville for 5 years, and I can tell you, I always, Kentucky's right on the other side there. I think Austin P's got a really good shot at
interesting
doing some stuff, man. I'm telling you, Austin P, I mean, they kind of hang around with you a little bit, right? So, Chris, before we go much further, we can kind of do away with this list here. You've kind of been doing some other research too. What are some other teams that you want to see make that jump up, that's not in this list, that may be at the Division 1AA?
1AA, man. You know what, man? I would love to say that I wish UNO was still here in Nebraska. They got rid of their football program a couple years. Actually, it's been quite a few years ago. No, I don't know if I have necessarily a team, but I can tell you that like a lot of schools, man, that are right there knocking on the door every year. I don't have, like I said, I don't have a specific team, Christian. Maybe you do, being down south. There's not a lot of 1AA schools around here. There's a bunch of them down in Kansas, though. There's a bunch of them, a bunch of JUCO schools, as I mentioned earlier, too. I know we're not talking about JUCO, but like, there's a lot of fucking talent, dude. There is. There's kids. We hear about it all the time. I swear to God, 75% of the NFL is kids that were either rode off or came from a JUCO school or came from, maybe a Power 5 school that nobody really knows of too much of or how they were doing there type of thing, if you know what I'm saying. Like Travis Kelce, he went to Cincinnati, right? Tyreek Hill played at Oklahoma State, got kicked out. I mean, you can name a ton of guys. Josh Allen, his only D1, scholarship was from Wyoming, right? There's always schools like that out there. Aaron Rodgers had to play JUCO, which is fucking crazy to me, as good as that guy is, right? I mean, there's before he went to Cal. So like there's a ton of schools out there. I think it's good for college football and the landscape. I wish I could answer your question. I really don't know one, just because I'm in the Midwest here. I can't think of one AA school, maybe Wichita State, but I don't even know how big they are, man. They're great in basketball. You know what I mean? They have a hell of a program down there in Kansas. I played there against them one time. But they weren't big enough. I mean, you know what I mean? You got to also, like, I think there's like a set of parameters basically you have to meet as a school to even qualify. I swear I saw something the other day on that, and I'm like, you got to have like a certain amount of kids, right? Towards that college, you have to have to even establish a football program. Christian, takes a lot, like there's 60 fucking kids out there. You got to have a practice squad. You got to have a fucking field. You got to have all this shit. There's a bunch of stuff, and I think you have to be halfway relevant for a certain amount of time. And then there's teams out there that try that, and they don't make it. They cancel the fucking football program. We've seen that before. Seen it here in Nebraska, even with smaller schools, even smaller than 1AA. So, what about you though? I want to know. You must know your FCS schools here. I'd like to know. I know you're a Georgia guy. There's probably some down there pretty close to home.
Man, I like North Dakota. I think that North Dakota school, they had Carson Wentz, Trey Lance, obviously out of those schools. Christian Watson, you would know that because you got by me because I had him on my fantasy team last year. Let's see here nor there. I think that they would, to me, I think, one of the North Dakota schools would be a great fit to move up. I mean, I think they could absolutely do it and have some success.
What about what's the other big one? Let's say Montana or Montana State. They're always playing them every year for the championship over there. They're really good too. Yeah. We got Toure a couple years ago from him. He played with us. Now he's with the Packers. He's going to be their slot guy this year, I think.
Like the Grizzlies or something like that, or
yeah, the Grizzlies. Yes. Yep. So there's my one team.
Yeah, they would be pretty good. Another good team would probably be, and they're making the move up already, and they're not. I don't think they're an FCS school right now, but it would be Kennesaw State. I mean, Kennesaw State, they're my home team. They're the closest college to me. I grew up 20 minutes from that campus, so I think they're going to do. I think they're going to be all right when they make.
Right, and then if I'm not mistaken, Christian, this was my other point. I did do some research on this part of it. Jacksonville State, Sam Houston State, I believe this year are making that jump. If I'm not mistaken, there's only 2 teams for 2023. And then, like you just brought up, Kennesaw State, that's why I have on my list too, is for next year, which I did not realize. I guess they're right next door. I did not know what state they were from, so I learned something new today. Probably got some boys down there that can run, I would assume. Just like Georgia Southern beat the shit out of us last year. I'm sure they've probably got some guys down there that can play some fucking football.
Hey, you ever heard of Justin Fields?
Yeah, he pretty good. I got his autograph right over here. Yeah.
Went to Kennesaw Mountain.
Really?
Actually, no, he didn't go to Kennesaw Mountain.
Was that Trevor Lawrence? Right? Weren't they right next door? Him and Trevor Lawrence are always tied.
Trevor Lawrence went to Cartersville High School. I think that was one of the Ronnie Brown, I think, who played at Auburn. I think went there too. I think it's Harrison High School is actually where.
Oh shit!
Let me type this in real quick because now this is gonna bother me.
Guys, don't believe me. Justin Fields, baby, got his auto right there. It's a $5,000 card, by the way. I know you loved yourself some Justin Fields there, Christian, because he didn't, make it there at Georgia, but decided to go to Ohio State. I'm sure that still hurts, right? I mean, but he was your fantasy football starting quarterback last year, was he not?
It had to be because it was Russell Wilson was the one that I inherited. So I had to do something there. I mean, it killed me to do it, but by God, you got to win by any means. So I had to start. No, he went to Harrison High School. So I was wrong the initial part of it, but then we saved it right there. I said
it's crazy though, those two, man, not to talk about Fields and Lawrence, but how same draft class, you know what I mean? They're like so linked together.
They were always considered coming out of high school, they were always considered 1A, 1 and like 1A and 1B. That was kind of the thing is they kept splitting it. One would go to these camps and would win one, and the other would go to the next one and be better. And they just kept kind of just going back and forth with it.
I think it's ironic too. They were in the same, NFL draft class 2021. And then now they're like the two, like probably talked about, can they both make that next step this year? You know what I mean? I mean, Lawrence had a pretty good season with Jacksonville last year with the playoff win. And then Fields has got a ton of hype. Everybody's putting him up there super high this year because, he had some of those crazy runs last year. Chicago got a bunch of weapons, not to make this an NFL show, but just crazy how those two were tied together in college. They were tied together in fucking high school, and they're only like so many miles apart. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, man. I mean, it definitely is crazy. They pretty much practically kind of grew up together.
Right.
And now they've got a shot to take over the NFL and kind of do some good things with their own respective teams. And yeah, we'll see, but we shall see. So Chris, right. the main show of the star here. Star of the show is Michigan State, right? The Spartans, Chris. I mean, what are your thoughts on Michigan State this year? You're a Big Ten guy.
Whew. I am actually, it's kind of funny. If I wasn't probably a Nebraska fan of the Big Ten, obviously, Michigan State's always been one of my favorite teams. Or, that was more under the Mark D'Antoni years, even though now he's gone. Mel Tucker has taken over the last 3-4 years now. Had a lot of successes. I think it was the second year. I believe they went they won 10 or 11 games that year. But the big thing with me this year, they finished 5-7 last year. If I'm not mistaken, they looked like shit last year. Like it did not look like a typical Michigan State team. I believe they finished 5th in the Big Ten, which is kind of odd in a way. Or excuse me, Big Ten East. Sorry, not Big Ten overall East. I read that wrong. Did not make a bowl game, obviously. The big thing with me is, man, they're losing Peyton Thorne, man. He went, I believe he's at Auburn now, right? That's where he decided to land. He's not there anymore. He'd been a 2 or 3 years. I know he'd been there for 2 or 3 years. I know he started for 2 basically at Michigan State, but The big thing with them, man, they're going to have to be better this year. Otherwise, I think Mel Tucker's on the hot seat. And I hate to fucking put that out there. It's not a hot take. Michigan State wants to win. Michigan State is also rivals with Michigan, who has been dominating over there for quite a while. And I know that bothers you. Ever watch that rivalry between Michigan and Michigan State? I mean, there's a brawl before and after the game every fucking year, dude. It's probably one of the most hated two teams I've ever seen play. Like that's a crazy game, by the way, if you haven't watched those two. Big thing is, too, they lose Jalen Reed. He was picked up by the NFL. Obviously, he was a stud. Peyton Thorne's gone. Keenan Coleman, I think he went to Florida State. He was another receiver. So they're going to have to rebuild that fucking room this year, Christian. They don't have a lot coming back on the offensive side. I hate when you don't have your quarterback coming back. I think that makes it tough. We really don't know what to expect. I'm not saying, Peyton Thorne was a bad quarterback. I'm not. He was a veteran, especially in today's world of college football. That's huge to me personally, in my opinion. I think it's Noah Kim, I believe, is probably going to be the starter there. I believe he was actually recruited by D'Antonio. So he's been in that program for a long time. If I'm not mistaken, don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that name rings a bell with me on that end of it. But, the big thing with them, too, here to wrap my side of it, Christian, their fucking schedule is brutal this year, in my opinion. Like, brutal compared to, like, a Nebraska or a Wisconsin or even a Michigan or Ohio State. Like, their schedule's tough as shit. So 5-7 last year, I know they want to make a bowl game, and we'll get into their record here, or not, their record, but we'll go through our predictions of what they think what we think they're going to be at the end of the year here. But I would like to hear your thoughts on Michigan State. I mean, I think I gave a pretty thorough, in-depth, what I feel is going to be tough for them this year is going to be that whole schedule, losing a lot of pieces on the offensive side of the ball. I believe they gave up 27 points a game last year, which is kind of high for Michigan State. They've usually had a pretty solid defense most of the time. I think they only scored 24 points a game last year. It's super low even. And that's going to be tough without your quarterback coming back. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah, I think you touched on it, brilliantly. You pretty much did a very good job of giving the overall overview of them. Like you said, they went 5-7 last year, Chris. The year prior, Mel Tucker went 11-2, and he had some quality wins, a couple of years ago. He beat Miami, Michigan, Penn State, and Pitt.
Yeah.
But last year, where it started to fall apart for him was the offensive line was terrible last year.
True. And
the secondary wasn't much better either. They got picked apart in a very un-Michigan State-like and un-Mel Tucker-like way last year. I understand, and I get it. A lot of people are going to say, well, he inherited a bad roster in 2020. In 2021, that was a pleasant surprise, and they're going to say this and that. But here's the reality of it, Chris. Also, I understand that he's also been putting together a quietly decent recruiting class over the last couple of years since he's taken over. And let's be honest for a second, right? You could make, when we talk about people inheriting a bad roster and needing some time to kind of recruit things out, work the kinks out, you can make that same statement about any Power 5 job, right? Because let's just be honest, right? It's so tough when you take a Power 5 job because a lot of people are transferring out now. You're going to have to rebuild the roster. It's probably not great. You're getting your work cut out for you. Look, the excuses, they stop real fucking fast when you're getting paid millions of dollars, right? So, at this level, people are going to want to see how does he respond in the third year. So he's going to have to improve off of a 5-7 record. I think last year they also really missed Kenneth Walker. That was a really tough kind of transition away. He was a huge part of their offense, had a great season with the Seattle Seahawks. You touched on Peyton Thorne. He transferred to Auburn after battling injuries last year and kind of struggling to see some of the same success he had in 2021. Noah Kim, he's going to step in for him, right? A lot of fans actually of Michigan State believe he has better arm talent, man. And possibly he might have even looked better in the spring practices. So
I could agree with that. I don't know if did you catch any of their spring game?
I was looking at it, right? Okay. I was looking at it, and here's the problem. They didn't actually, I don't think they did like an actual spring game. They did more of like a spring sort of wrap up practice kind of thing.
That's
it was not a, yeah. Sorry. It wasn't a traditional game. So it was kind of hard to really look at as far as all that's concerned. But I mean, the kid, I did watch him, some of his throws. I mean, he looks like he's got great talent. I mean, he doesn't look bad at all.
He's been there for a long time. Like I said, I'm pretty sure he's Mark D'Antonio. Like that was his last class. Like before he stepped down or left or whatever, fired, whatever you want to call it. Basically, they ran him out of there finally after all those years. He's one of those kids, man. I know he's been on the roster for quite a while, dude. So like he should know the system. I mean, Mel Tucker's not an idiot. I don't think Mel Tucker's a bad coach. I think, like you just touched on it very, very nicely, Christian, about inheriting this and that. You're getting paid a lot of money, though, right? I mean, Lebanon, man, it's almost like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't now because you won 11 games right off the rip. Now everybody expects you to live up to that, right? Last year, I'll be honest with you, Michigan State, it was surprising to me how bad they were. And you touched on it. Their offensive line was fucking atrocious. They didn't run the ball like they normally do, right? I mean, usually Michigan State's got some crazy good back, Kenneth Walker. They had Le'Veon Bell back in the days. I mean, they've had some stud running backs, right? Usually a power, physical brand of football going on over there. They didn't look that way last year at all. And that's where I'm at too. And not to interject on your take here, but like, I just had to hop in there with that because, like I said, Kim did look good. I mean, from what I saw, and you're right, it wasn't a spring game. I don't even know what the hell you want to call that. I'm going to call it a spring game, but their spring season type of thing going on there. But no, he looked good. I mean, I was never like fascinated with Peyton Thorne. I really wasn't. I'll be honest. I'll piss some more Auburn people off. I'll be interested to see if he even starts down there because I going into the SEC is a much different conference than even in the Big Ten. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I mean, you make some good points there too. I mean, look, the thing with Peyton Thorne is I think he broke some records, in 2021 for him. He was lights out, and then last year again he was hurt. He battled injuries. It was a really interesting thing to see. Kind of again, he wasn't. You could tell he really wasn't himself, and the offensive line wasn't the same, and he didn't have that run game to really lean on either. So he took a huge step back, but it's going to be very interesting to see. I think Kim, he had 174 yards, 3 touchdowns last year in mop-up duty. So, I mean, like I said, we've talked about his arm talent. He's going to have to show it and step up big time if they've got a shot at it. Good news for him, though, is they get running back Jalen Berger back. He put up over 800 yards last year and 6 touchdowns. They also bring in UConn transfer Nathan Carter and USF Bull transfer Jaron Ingham to running back room as well. We love the Bulls out here. You touched on Keon Coleman, who transferred to Florida State. As far as I'm concerned, you're going to have to look for wide receiver Trey Mosley and tight end Malik Carr to step up and carry a lot of this load for them this year. I mean, they're going to have to do a lot more than what they did last year. Obviously, Mosley had 359 yards and 4 touchdowns, and Carr had 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also got a very talented slot receiver and someone that you and our favorite, show favorite Children of the Corn is very familiar with here, and that is Alante Brown. What are your thoughts on him?
Man, he's uber talented. I've heard so many. That's a problem when you ask me a question like that, and I'm linked in here to Nebraska, but like you hear all sorts of different types of rumors. And I'm not going to go into that, but like it sucks. I just don't think I don't know how to word this. Like basically, like he's talented. He didn't get a lot of playing time here, really. We had like quite the rotation last year, and I'm going to be honest with you, dude. I don't think Scott Frost could tell his head from his fucking ass most of the time, or what he had for talent. I don't think that's news to anybody that follows me or this channel or even Christian for the most part. We both live in Nebraska here. Kind of sucks. I think we kind of missed out on him because I actually do think he's going to be pretty good. And I'll be honest with you. This may be a hot take for me, and maybe we can circle back to this later on during the year when football starts. I actually think he's going to be their number 1. I actually think he's that talented. It just sucks that he's not here. I've heard a lot of rumors as to why he left, but man, dude, we don't have a super deep fucking wide receiver room here right now either. We lost Trey Palmer over here. Going to be tough this year, and Nebraska's going to be able to move the ball and do some stuff with Jeff Sims, but Alante Brown would have made us better, man. It kind of sucks. We have Xavier Betts coming back, but that's just that's my take on it. I think he, like you said, they lost Jalen Reed, dude. The NFL took him, swiped him up. We all knew he was going to be gone anyway, but losing Coleman and those guys, man, it's going to be tough for Michigan State's going to have a revamped, kind of completely new offense. I don't want to say the way they're going to run it, stylistic wise, but basically just players. Like, it's going to be interesting to see what they kind of do this year in the Big Ten. And like I said, man, that fucking schedule, they need to be able to run the fucking football. And it comes down, Christian, you know this as well as I do. You can have a great running back, but if you don't have an offensive line, the big boys up front, the guys that look like you up there, you ain't going anywhere.
Jesus Christ. I mean, you bring up a lot of, children of the corn, we'll kind of say this. He's worth at least 10 touchdowns. Yeah. I mean, I think he's an extremely fast kid. He's a great, he can be an elite, slot player for him. I mean, man, he really can. I think he's going to flourish at Michigan State this year. I think he's going to carve out a nice little role for himself there.
Yep.
I think, and you touched on it beautifully, Chris. You talked about my brethren, the offensive linemen there. Yep. And, I think everything as far as the offense is concerned starts and ends with them. If they've got to be much more improved than they were last year for them to realistically have a shot.
Yep. Yeah. I don't have much to add to Michigan State on that part of it on this topic because, like I said, I keep saying this. We'll dig into the schedule here, dude. It is fucking brutal. It's brutal, dude. Like, if they had Nebraska scheduled this year, okay, I could bump your win total up quite a bit. And like I said, this isn't a Nebraska show, and we're not talking about them too much here. But being a Big Ten fan for how many years now in a row, dude, I've watched a lot of Michigan State. And what I saw last year, and then what you guys have lost in your quarterback, Kim coming in, I think he's going to be okay. But you're going to have to be able to run the fucking football. Defense wasn't overly impressive either last year, Christian. Pretty goddamn weak.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, and Mel Tucker, he's a defensive-minded coach. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, he was Georgia's defensive coordinator at one point. Right? I got nothing but love for Mel here. But here's the thing, man. It's a little concerning to see in year 3 of a coach, they were ranked 103rd in total defense and 87th in passing yards allowed last year, especially in a conference like the Big Ten.
Yeah, but they don't throw the ball a ton.
Yeah, where apart from Ohio State, it's not exactly super lights out on offense. Excuse me. Jesus. Super lights out on offense, right? The good news is, though, right? The good news of all this is they do get a superstar middle linebacker back in Cam Holliday. Yeah, I'm going to read you a stat line from last year. Well, I'll just read this one. He had 120 tackles last year by himself.
That's impressive.
So that's a really good thing when you get the heart and soul of your defense back. They also bring back Will linebacker Jacoby Winston. He had 5.5 sacks last year. That's pretty good too, as an outside edge rusher. Defensive line, they bring in the number 12 defensive end last year from Texas A&M. It's Tunmaize Adelian. We're just going to say Tunmaisu Adele. There you go. Sorry I butchered your name, right? And they're going to pair him up with Simeon Barrow, who had 4 sacks last year as well. Look, I think their front seven, Chris, is going to be much, much better, right? It's going to be much better this year.
It's got to be, right? I mean, if it isn't, I think Mel Tucker, like I said, it's going to be on the fucking hot seat, man. I do, and I hate to say that. I like Mel Tucker just as much as you do. It's just they got to win. Michigan State, man, that is one program I started off the show kind of talking about them here. I like them a lot. They remind me of a kind of like a Nebraska program in a way, which obviously I relate to, but it's just that I always like Mark D'Antoni, defensive minded guy, always had great backs, right? Kind of like Wisconsin in a way, right? Smash mouth football, tough in every fucking game. Didn't matter if they're playing the number 1 team, and usually it was Ohio State or Penn State or Michigan. They always played them super, super tough. And Michigan State, I always thought, they had a lot of class usually. Now it's like, I'm not saying the class part of it. It's just like last year was such a disappointment for, I think Michigan State fans would agree, right? I mean, 5-7 is not good, man. It's not. You don't make a bowl game. You don't go anywhere. I know a lot about that, being a Nebraska fan lately. They got to get it turned around. And you said it perfectly. Just like Children of Corn said, we know offensive, defensive line, that's where it's won, right? Especially in the Big fucking 10. Defense has got to improve. They do bring back some pieces. Does it happen? I mean, I can't tell you that it does. I can tell you if the schedule is a little different for them. I think it definitely would be better. But again, we're going to get into that here shortly, guys. We'll talk about the schedule. Christian, I'll kick it back over to you here quick.
Yeah, I mean, he brings up a really good point there, and I'll kind of say this when we'll get back on topic. But it's, if you've got one of the two, you can reach a bowl game. I mean, if you've got them both, you can play teams like a Georgia, like an Alabama, right? As much as that pains me to say, but I mean, you think about it. Even Dion at Colorado, or actually before he was at Colorado, when he was at Jackson State, they asked him, can you take on Alabama? And he said, not right now. We got to get, a defensive line and kind of build the trenches. That's what we've got to do. And that's the only shot we've got to actually play with those teams, right? And I think that really does ring true for just about any school out there. For me, though, I think they're going to be better this year. They've got some talent there. They've got to make sure that it fits on on the field, not just on paper. The corners are going to be much better this year, too. They've got 2 transfers that have played in this conference. In Wisconsin transfer Samar Melvin, and Iowa transfer Terry Roberts. They just announced that, I think, a couple of days ago. For me, Chris, the biggest question mark on their defense is going to be in the backfield there, right? The back half of that secondary with both safeties. I mean, both starters, Dylan Tatum and Jaden Mangum, they played very sparingly last year. So anytime that you've got 2 guys that haven't played well, sometimes it can go very well. Or haven't played much at all. Sometimes it can go really, really good for you because they're just really talented and they've just kind of snuck by. And sometimes you can get kind of burned with it, literally speaking. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I think we've pretty much touched on just about all of their roster. So if you're a Michigan State fan, hopefully we did you some justice on this here. Let's get into their record predictions, Chris. All right, let's pull this up here. All right, there we go.
This Chris, is what I wanted to talk about, man. Let's be honest here. I'll
switch to the headset. Sorry, we're having some audio difficulties there. So, when we look at Michigan State's record or their schedule here, they start the season off at Central Michigan. I think they've got a good shot at winning that, obviously. Then they go to, they're playing Richmond, another good shot there. Washington, there's no way. There is no way. I don't think they beat Washington this year. Washington's going to be a pretty good team. Maryland, that's a tough game too. They can probably win that one. So Iowa, well, it depends. I mean, it depends on what you really think of Iowa this year. They bring in Cade McNamara, if I'm not mistaken, to be the quarterback. They're going to be good defensively. So Iowa's it just depends on what kind of offense they're packing this year. Rutgers is always really they're like Syracuse, man, aren't they? Rutgers, they're good for a couple of years.
Oh, yeah.
They kind of up and down. So Michigan, I don't got them in that one. Minnesota's a tough game, but again, I think same thing. I think they could beat Minnesota if they bring the right stuff and they get on a roll. Then, like you said, man, they kind of have a gauntlet here, dude, where they play Nebraska, Ohio State, Indiana, and Penn State. Indiana's not really so much part of that, but that's still a pretty rough way to kind of end the season there, last 4-game stretch.
Yeah, Christian, can you hear me real quick with the audio difficulty? I apologize.
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay,
cool. Okay, sorry about that, guys. I got a shit mic, I guess. Long story short, no, Christian touched on it. This schedule, this is what I really wanted to talk about Michigan State. It's not that Michigan State, I think, is going to be bad this year. I don't know if the record's going to do them any justice by the end of the year. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Please do not take it that fucking way, please. Washington's going to be tough, Christian. You know this, right? I mean, we got them. I got Washington pretty goddamn high this year with Michael Penix and those guys. They've returned a ton. Daniel, you ought to be happy, buddy. I know you're a big Washington guy, and I love your Huskies this year. Don't get me wrong. Maryland, not worried about them so much. Iowa's going to be tough. I don't care what anybody says. I definitely hate Iowa. Not to piss off Iowa fans. We'll do our own show on you guys, and you guys will hate me for the rest of your life. That's okay. But Iowa will play everybody tough. Just what type of team they are, right, Christian? Rutgers, they're for some reason Rutgers. I never can figure that team out. It's like a coin flip every other year. 1 year they're pretty relevant. They play people tough. Next year they have a 3-9 record. But we're going to give Michigan State benefit of the doubt there. They run with that one. I will say the Iowa game is pretty much a question mark for me. To backtrack here, Washington will be a loss. Michigan, I'm ultra high on Michigan. We're going to come out with our preseason rankings here in a couple months. Just know that I'm very, very, very high on Michigan. They return a lot of people. Minnesota, man, people laugh at me. I talk about this, about the Nebraska-Minnesota game. That's week 1 for us here as Husker fans. I'm scared of Minnesota a little bit. It's week 1. This is what, week 7, 8, whatever. I don't think Minnesota is going to be a pushover this year, but I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to Michigan State in this one that they pull it off. Obviously, we're playing Nebraska. I got to roll Skurs here, baby. You know how I do. Ohio State, holy shit. So Christian laughs. It's Ohio State, man. I'm going to give them an L there. Indiana, Penn State. Christian, what's that last team? I did not see that with your Michigan State record prediction above that. Do they have one more game after that? No, they don't. Okay, it's perfect on the screen. Penn State, I am very high on this year as well. So I got what? One. I got Penn State, Ohio State, Nebraska, Michigan, Washington. That's 5 losses. And I'm saying 7-5, and not to piss you guys off as Michigan State fans, please don't take it that way. That is a brutal fucking schedule. Like, if Nebraska had to play this schedule, I wouldn't even put them at 7-5, to be honest with you. Christian might put them 11-1, but that's Christian.
You fucking joke.
But no, I'm just saying this is going to be a brutal year. I mean, it's just a brutal schedule. I hope they're better than that. I like Michigan State a lot more, and I personally like it, but I'm a realist. It's going to be a tough year. You know, Daniel said 3 or 4 wins is my opinion, is what he said in the chat. He's not wrong. That I would hope to get more than 3 or 4 this year, but I could see another 5-7 year if that does happen. It wouldn't be, God, I wouldn't say that would probably be shocking to me, just how brutal this schedule is, and some of these mid-tier Pac-10 team, or excuse me, Big Ten teams are. I don't know, Christian. What was your record there as I was fucking around with this audio shit? Did you give an actual prediction there?
No, I hadn't quite given one yet. I was just kind of going through the schedule there. So you said, who did you say they were going to lose to? Washington, Iowa, Michigan, Nebraska, and Ohio State?
And then Penn State at the end of the year there.
You got them 6-6.
Okay, they only got 12 games there. You're right, 6-6. So, yeah, I do. Yeah, I do, and I know, God, that pains for me to say that because I actually think Michigan State's going to be actually a pretty good team this year.
I've got them at 7-5. So I got them at 7-5. I got Washington. I got losses to Washington, Iowa, Michigan, Nebraska, Ohio State, and then I think that last game of the year, right? I think they pulled off the upset because look, Penn State, they've got a really young, talented quarterback in Drew Aller. But I don't know, man. I see him having a tough time in this one, and he might be in for an up and down season, right? I mean, we haven't really broken them down yet. We haven't really seen them. I think that, like, most of the time you see Penn State quarterbacks, right? I mean, how many times have we seen Penn State in the last couple of years play Auburn and lose? Or how many times have we seen them get all hyped up and they go play? You know, it's a really tough thing to really gauge what Penn State's going to do. They do really good at getting guys to the league. They have really good quarterback prospects all the time. It's really tough to really gauge them. I like Michigan State in this. I think that Michigan State's kind of coming up on the back, you know, on the uptrend here. But I think really at the end of the day, they're going to beat some teams. They're going to beat most of the teams they're supposed to. And I think they're going to shock some people with at least 1 or 2 upsets maybe this year, right? So 7-5 to me, that's a pretty conservative, I would say, pretty right around that top of the line for them.
So my question to you, and I know that we're talking about Michigan State, Christian, and I got to deviate just a hair there because you touched on Penn State, correct? And we haven't talked a lot about Penn State on this show, and I think that's kind of maybe a future pod here. But are you that high? And I know we haven't done our preseason rankings, but I want to know personally. Are you that high on Penn State this year? I mean, they are rated, I believe, almost top 10 in a lot of people's polls, preseason polls, ESPN polls, shit like that. I know rankings don't mean shit in the beginning of the year. This is the last game of the year. Teams are usually much different from the start of the year till the end of the year. Are you down on them this year compared to maybe previous years? We know they never seem to win the big one against Michigan or Ohio State. They play on that side of the conference where it's a hell of a lot tougher. I want to hear your thoughts on Penn State just real quickly here.
I think the problem is it's not that I'm really down on Penn State. I just think they have the misfortune of playing in the same conference as Ohio State and Michigan.
Okay.
You know, that's, you know, and they're in that same, or they're in that same division, you know, not that matters anymore. I know the Big Ten's kind of getting away from that, but there for the longest time, I mean, that was really a problem for them. But yeah, I think for me, I've got Penn State. I don't know, man. I've got Penn State as a top 25 team this year. I'm not saying that they're a bad team or anything like that. I think they could probably finish the year off maybe top 15, top 20.
Wow.
But You know what I mean? Again, it really just depends. I mean, there's a lot of facets of this that is going to be really interesting. I mean, how many times every year do we see Penn State, not to hate on Penn State, but how many times every year do we see Penn State in a big game and they shit the bed?
No, you're not wrong about that, Christian. You're not. And that's why I wanted to just hear your thoughts on Penn State and what you think this year. I think we're going to be a little bit different. I actually think Penn State is a top 15 team this year. I'm very high on them this year. I like James Franklin. I think they're going to be good. I think maybe this is finally the year. Maybe I'm still dick riding, but I mean, we keep saying that about Penn State though every year, right? When's it going to be it? Because like you said, they put a lot of fucking people in the NFL, right? I mean, they do all the time. I don't know, man. I'll go back to Michigan State because this is what we're talking about. It pains me to say 6-6, dude, Christian. I mean, would you not agree with me? I haven't heard you say it. This is a pretty brutal schedule, Big Ten wise.
I was really close when I was first doing this to putting them at 6-6, and then I kind of kept going back through the schedule and I kept kind of thinking about it a little more. I think they're going to be better this year on defense, and so I think being better on defense and probably having a little bit better offensive line play, not having to rely, so much on a banged up quarterback, potentially, right? Potentially could probably get you a couple extra wins this year.
Okay. All right. I'll leave it there, Christian. I think that was a good take on Michigan State, though. Like I said, I feel like I'm hating on them when I say 6-6, man. I really do. It sucks because, like I said, I actually think Michigan State's going to be a tough team this year. I don't think they're an easy out for anybody. So I'll leave it at that.
No, they're definitely not, Chris. But let's kind of kick it over to your favorite segment here, man. A little hot take action. We're going to get in Daniel's part of the woods here, man. Chris,
yeah.
What hot take? Oregon State has a shot to compete for the Pac-12 championship this year. What do you think?
Okay, here's my If somebody told me that their defense will finish number 1 in the Pac-12 again like they did last year, yeah, I do. Unfortunately, I don't think they will. Why? Because they lost 2 QBs in Wright and Austin to the NFL. And man, I'm big on corners, dude. If you got 2 lockdown corners like those 2 kids were last year in the Pac-12, where there's a lot of offense, Christian, we always say it's a track meet over there. Most games going to be tough. They do bring in DJ Ungile. I can never say his last name, so I'm just going to call him DJ. I apologize. I'm a simple fuck here from Nebraska. Borderline trailer trash. My thing is, though, they were 105th, if I'm not mistaken, Christian, in passing yards last year. Pretty fucking sad. There's only 133 Division I teams, so they're going to be better there. I don't care. DJ was a huge, I believe he was, God, if I'm not mistaken, he was a 5-star when he was at Clemson. Damn close. It's okay. Did not pan out at Clemson. Looked like dog shit last year, like complete dog shit. Was Trevor Lawrence's backup, if I'm not mistaken. Played well that year, but he had really good receivers that year, so that makes a difference too. But here we are. Oregon State, I don't think they do. Daniel's going to be happy about this. Again, love you, Daniel, but Washington's going to be really, really fucking good. This is the year of the Pac-12, man. I hate on the Pac-12 a lot. This year they're going to be good. Pac-12, you got USC, you got Washington. Not in this order for me either. Oregon, right? I have Oregon probably coming out of that. I haven't come out with my preseason rankings yet. Not yet. But, man, Oregon State is going to have to play out their fucking mind, I think, Christian. This isn't really even a hot take for me to win this. Like, this would be, to play for a Pac-12 championship, they're going to have to be elite. And that defense would have to be elite. DJ is going to have to play like a fucking 5-star recruit, what everybody thought he was. I mean, he's going to have to come out there. We're going to have to hear some fucking receivers that we've never heard of in order for them to compete for this, because Washington is, if I'm not mistaken, Washington, USC, and Oregon are damn near all 3 of them are almost like top 12, I think, in every goddamn ranking I've seen. Like, they're going to be good. And I don't base my rankings just off of somebody else's or some website or ESPN or any of that stuff. It's just they're going to have to be elite. And, dude, everybody forgets about Utah. You know what I mean? I love Utah a lot. And I know, Christian, there's a team over there in the Pac-12 that we've caught a lot of heat for, have we not? And I'm going to say the name. And I mean, God forbid we said that maybe they'd win 4 or 5 games this year. And all these people said they're winning 10, 11, maybe even running the table, playing in the playoff for a national title would be Colorado. So I know you're scared of Colorado, Christian, if you're an Oregon State fan. I'll kick it over to you, buddy. I want to hear your thoughts. This is a hot take. Christian, bring it to me real, buddy.
Man, you talked about it, man. The miniature guitar, you just talked about there, the quarterback there. I can never fucking say that name. So that's what you get for being from Georgia, I guess. Look, I think if he steps up and plays like the 5-star quarterback he was in high school, right? Coming out of high school, he's got a great shot at it. Here, you said something very interesting last year. You said something very interesting just now, Chris. He looked god awful. I don't think he actually was that he was super bad at Clemson, man. I don't think it was that. I just don't think he was elite on the same level like they're used to. You know what I mean? Like
Deshaun
he was
and Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence. You got Taj Boyd. You've got all of those guys, right? I mean, he just wasn't that elite level quarterback that you're used to seeing that Clemson has, right? He was probably an above average ACC quarterback, but again, on a team like Clemson that you're expecting to run roughshod over the rest of the league, it's just not good enough, right? So I think the big thing here, Chris, let's take a look at their schedule. This might shock you a little bit, right? Their schedule is not terrible from an outside perspective here. They start the year off playing at San Jose State. Then they play against UC Davis, San Diego State, at Washington State, and then that's when they start getting into some more, obviously tougher opponents here. I think they've got a great shot at going 4-0 to start the year off.
I was just going to interject there, and I would agree with you now that you pulled up the schedule. But here's my problem. What about those last two games? And I think that just decides so much there. And does Oregon State get hot, Christian? And if you think DJ is a better quarterback than I do, obviously, and I'll leave it there. We'll debate on that another day. Maybe if we talk about Clemson at some point. But even Utah, which is at home. I mean, these Pac-12 teams sometimes, man, especially these middle of the road, above average Pac-12 teams, these games are always so super fucking high scoring. I mean, do you think Oregon State last year's 10? I believe they had 10 fucking wins last year, if I'm not mistaken. They had a great season last year. Or no, it wasn't 10. What was it, 9 or something like that? They had a ton of wins.
Yeah.
Do you think? I mean, with that defense, and defense kept them in a lot of those games. Do you think that if they can do that again, like you actually think that they can maybe compete with a Washington or Oregon or a USC up there at the very, very top, even Utah, I'll throw them in there as well? I mean, just looking at the schedule, I'm seeing I agree with what you're saying. 4-0, absolutely.
Again, 3, I might be wrong. No, I don't think I'm wrong with this. But 3 of those first 4 games are not Pac-12 games, so that really doesn't matter. They could literally go 0-3 to start the year off, and then they could just win out, and then they would be back in the Pac-12. But here's the way I look at it, Chris. I look at it from the standpoint of, offensively and defensively, you've got 3 really sort of less superior opponents, not by a whole lot in some of these teams, but by enough to where you should be able to gel as a team going into that Washington State game and kind of get on the same page. Again, do I think Utah, Colorado, well, I'm not going to say Colorado, but do I think Utah, Washington, and Oregon are going to be easy wins? No, I don't. I don't think that at all. I think in order for them to compete, they're definitely going to have to pull off at least 1 to 2 upsets against either Utah, Washington, or Oregon and win out. And they have to win out the rest of the schedule to absolutely have a shot at this. Look, I think it's a really hot take, and I know I kind of built that up. I think it's a hot take, but I think the reason why it's a top take, Daniel said it best, man, is they're getting better, but they're not upper echelon yet,
Agreed.
Right? I mean, the Pac-12 runs through USC, Oregon, Washington, and Utah. And I mean, those are the teams to beat if you want to get in. You got to at least beat a couple of those teams here if you've got any shot in hell at trying to compete for that Pac-12 championship at the end of the year.
No, I agree with you, and that's where I'm at, Christian. I guess what I was going to, end this off with Oregon State is like it's a lot of it to me. This year, I dug pretty fucking deep into these guys, honestly, even though it's a hot take, but it's like their defense was number 1 last year in the Pac-12. And it kept them in a lot of fucking games. They won a lot of games, but they still didn't finish at the top, right? It was USC last year, it was Oregon. It's your prototypical Washington was fucking awesome last year. Like, I don't see their defense repeating. And I guess this is where maybe me and you different. We're going to find out. This is what I love about the world. We're going to find out here shortly, in a couple months, how good DJ really is. You know what I mean? I'm not near as high. I thought he was a part of the problem at Clemson. We'll have a debate about that some other day. I know you're I know you're big on him, but I don't think I mean, they can't go any worse than 105th on passing offense. I mean, he's going to sling the ball around. He's a big kid with a big fucking arm. Reminds me a lot of, I hate to say the word, Jamarcus Russell, like at LSU a long time ago. He could throw the ball around, sling it around. Christian, you're bringing up his stats. You look like you're a stat whore. You look like you're digging deep over there. I want to know what his stats were last year. Here we go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, 2,500 yards, 22 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 64.8 QBR in the ACC.
Terrible. You're right. It wasn't terrible.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm not trying to bag on the Pac-12. I'm just saying if you compare some of the defenses in the Pac-12 to some of the defenses in the ACC,
okay.
I think it's a little bit of a step down. So it's going to get easier in the competition there, in the scheduling.
I agree with that. I agree with that portion of it. It just felt like in big moments last year with Clemson with him, he threw a lot of like just terrible interceptions in times that he shouldn't have, and or fumbled the ball. You know what I mean? I watched a lot of Clemson's games last year, and you're right. Maybe I might be wrong. I'll admit when I'm wrong, 100%. I guess we're going to find out with him this year at Oregon State. I do think he's going to have some godly numbers, but I also think that's inflation because it's the Pac-12 and not to hate on the Pac-12.
Yeah, I mean, he also had 500 yards rushing, and he had 7 touchdowns last. I mean, the guy put up almost 3,000 total yards and 29 touchdowns, right? So, I mean, again, like I said, he was not the worst thing that I've seen. Again, like a lot of people think, oh my God, they just look at it and they hear it and they're going to say, well, he was a trash can back there at quarterback. No, a trash can would literally be some of the Alabama quarterbacks. I mean,
that would be Jalen.
Not split hair. Yeah.
Moreau, I agree. No, 100%. No, you're not wrong. I mean, I'm glad you pulled that up. That's what I wanted to look at. I didn't get enough time to sit there and click over to that, but I wanted to see what his stats were. No, his stats weren't bad. ACC numbers, he put up some really nice numbers. Again, the Oregon State's year is going to come down to him, I think. Limited turnovers. I think he's going to throw for fucking 30 touchdowns. I do. I really, truly do. Kick and run a little bit. Big question, like I started the show off with, is can their defense play like that again? They lost their 2 top corners. Those guys are studs, by the way. Like that was like probably 2 of the top 15 cornerbacks in the NFL draft. So like those guys are way up there. But like if push comes to shove in the Pac-12, you got to get a pass rush. You got to be able to fucking do something over there to stop some of these teams because Washington is not going anywhere. Bo Nix in Oregon is not going anywhere. God, we know we got the Heisman Trophy winner back at USC. To compete for that Pac-12, man, that is a tough gauntlet right there. I know Daniel would agree. And he says it right there. How will he act in big moments, with the game on the line? That's the thing with him, too. I saw him a couple times last year in bigger games. He just didn't step up to the plate personally, in my opinion, Christian. But you know what? I love your guys' opinions, Christian. I love him to death. I mean, we're going to find out, right? We're going to put our money where our mouth is, and we're going to see what he's about. But overall, to answer your question about the hot take, no, I don't see it happening this year. And Daniel said it best, again, to bring up Daniel again one more time here, but he said it best. They're getting better. They are. Good for Oregon State, man. Good for them competing over there, being a name that we're in a topic that we're actually talking about, I think they're going to be fine. I think they're definitely not going to be a pushover. When you see them on the schedule, I don't think teams are going, oh, that's a fucking win. You know what I mean? Like they do with Nebraska over here in the Big Ten most years, as they should. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think you said it all perfectly. 100% agree. With what you said, and Daniel obviously right here. Based off what we've seen, probably not all that great. But again, you never know, right? I mean, you could make the same argument about Joe Burrow when he went from Ohio State to LSU. Again, just in this weird era of transfer football, you never know what someone's going to do.
You're right.
You just don't. I think, Chris, this brings us up to our last sort of segment here on the show, and that is the 2-minute drill. So everybody obviously keep commenting here. We're going to stay on for probably more than 2 minutes. So long as we get some comments here, we'll talk about whatever you guys want to talk about here to kind of wrap the show up. So ask us anything, literally ask us anything.
Yeah. Ask Christian how much he weighs. What's his 40 time? How much does he bench press?
Faster than Chris and stronger than Chris. That's all you need to know.
No, man, I am. Are you not excited though, dude, for this? I love when we talk about these like hot takes, man, because like we just come up with these and like go off the rip. I love it, man. I love it. I love it
too. I love it too. I mean, we've had some really interesting hot takes and some different comments. I mean, look, we'll talk about it right now. It's one that I bring up a lot to a lot of different people, and that was if Iowa loses to Nebraska this year, I bet you on this. I have to get fucking frosted tips, dude. And same thing with you.
Yeah, and you're gonna look super sexy. I'm sure you'll throw on a pink polo and some skin tight jeans. I heard that was kind of your past before I met you.
Jesus,
so
dude.
yeah, well, I'm sure you'll look like a frat boy. You'll look great.
Now I'll look like a can of busted biscuits, bro. You know what I mean? That's what I'm gonna look like.
Well, that might happen too. And it looks like we got something here in the chat. To answer your question, Children of the Corn, that's huge. 4-star kid playing DB. Actually, I was talking to a couple other people today about that. I actually think he's got a good chance to start. I think that's huge for Nebraska. We got some young DBs back there right now. His brother was a fucking stud, obviously. So, no, I think we got a good chance there with him. It's good. Matt Rule's done a tremendous job of recruiting after the Scott Frost bullshit, the whole fucking shit show that was here. No, he's done a great job. I think this is going to be huge for Nebraska. I truly do. I'm glad we got another 4-star in here. Nebraska's just got like this huge question mark this year, I guess, overall for me. It's like, man, it's going to be a totally revamped defense and offense. And I am personally, as a Nebraska fan, super fucking excited to see what we put on the field week 1 against Minnesota.
Man, let me tell you something. I like this. I really like it because, you think about like some of the best recruiters in college football, the Kirby Smarts, the Nick Sabans, those kind of guys, what's the guy over at Ohio State? Brian Hartline, right? You think about some of these guys that are really elite recruiters. Got to be honest with you, man. Matt Rule probably does better than anybody in the country at getting these guys that are, from what I saw, he was a 3-star guy, right? So he could be a 3 or 4-star guy. I think
he got bumped up though. I guess it probably depended on what recruiting service you were looking at. But go ahead.
That's the other thing too. It's so hard. One guy could be a 5-star on one website, the next website he could be a 4-star, whatever have you. Every time you look at recruiting, you type in recruiting in college football, everybody signs an elite, player. I think Matt Rule does a really good job at getting guys that are kind of under the radar guys. He gets the most out of them, right? So this may not be like the most sexy class, as a first like real class for him that Nebraska's going to sign. Agree.
Yeah.
But I think that if you look at how they're going to perform, I think he's going to get a hell of a lot out of them.
No, 100%. I will add this, man. One thing I love about Matt Rule, talk about him here for a second because, Children of the Corn brought up Nebraska. Matt Rule is recruiting guys for his fucking system, what he wants to run. Even if that's under the radar type of guys like, like Buford here, like Scott Frost, not to talk about him, and we could do a whole fucking show on that clown. He just recruited the best player that he could possibly find in that class. Drove me nuts. Did that for 5 years here, 4 years, whatever the hell it was. Pissed me off. Like, it didn't fit his system. And I still don't to this day, and I don't think anybody's ever going to know really what the hell was his system. Because it was so, coaches changes and fucking all over the place, running the spread. And then RPO / what. I mean, he never really knew what the fuck he was doing. And I'm sure the players had a hard time, like what are we really doing here? You know what I mean? What is our, I guess the word I want to use, identity. Like, I never really saw that. And one thing about Rule, man, in his history, look back at Temple, you look at the Panthers, you look at Baylor, where he's been super, super successful. And I won't say the Panthers he was. NFL is a whole different game. We'll get that's a whole different topic for another day. Is that he's recruiting guys for his system. That's what I love. Jeff Sims, there's a reason why Casey Thompson left. Let's be honest. He said, you know what? Probably not going to fit into this RPO style as much as I like Jeff Sims. I mean, Jeff Sims can run the ball. I think that's a big thing, and I think that's what Matt Rule's doing. He's like, you know what? We're going to bring on guys that fit my defensive build and my staffs, and we're going to recruit guys maybe that aren't the highest, recruited kids. I could give a shit about your stars, honestly. At the end of the day, Christian, really don't mean shit to me. A guy like Stetson Bennett, we want to talk about him for a minute? I mean, how many stars was that kid? Like negative.
Actually, I really don't know. I mean, he was a walk-on though. Man, he might have been like a two-star quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, the kid nobody even fucking knew, and he just won back-to-back titles. So like that shit don't mean much to me. But I think Rule's done a great job with that. And to touch on Children of the Corn about his statement there, I think this is a big recruit. You said it too, Christian. I think this is gonna be big for Nebraska. Like, this is good that we're still pulling guys in. We're pulling people over to Nebraska. Not maybe the marquee type of name, as far as like stars go, but who gives a shit, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I think that, to me, Children of the Corn brings up a really good point here. And I just wanted to look it up, make sure I got the right one here. I think, was it Stephon Wynn from last year that was the Alabama transfer to play defensive tackle for you guys?
Yes. Yep.
Yep. He says, what are the chances we get some more wide receivers before game one? We got a few more, but we need some tight ends too, big time. Look, Stephon Wynn, I mean, he was a third, fourth string guy at Alabama. He was a big pickup last year. I remember that. He didn't get on campus until about a month before that Northwestern game. And he just looked, he did not see the field much. And even when he got on the field, it was very slow maturation process. I mean, this is pretty late in the game right now to start trying to pick up wide receivers and tight ends, out of the portal.
I could speak on this a little bit about the wide receiver spot. The good thing is we got Marcus Washington back again. He played with Casey Thompson at, Texas the year before last year. He's going to probably be our number one. I mean, Billy Kemp looked really good in the spring game. He played a little bit last year. He's a good slot guy. I think he'll be fine. I'm not too worried about that part of it. The big one coming back is Xavier Betts. He was Gatorade Player of the Year in Nebraska 2 years ago. He left last year for whatever reason. I heard there was a big issue between him and Mickey Joseph, the wide receivers coach last year before he became the head coach after Scott got fired, that whole thing. So he was ineligible basically last year, but he came back. Xavier Betts, if you guys haven't watched him, man, Bellevue West, dude, this kid could fucking play in high school. Now, I'm not comparing high school to college, totally different game. But I think Nebraska's wide receiver room is, I don't want to say it's not deep, but we have, like, our starters, I think, are going to be okay. And I think your guys are not going to see a ton. Like last year, we threw the ball a lot. We had to throw the ball to Trey Palmer. He had the best receiving year ever at Nebraska last year. He broke pretty much every fucking record there was as a receiver last year. I don't think you're going to see that kind of production out of the passing game. I think we're going to run the ball a lot more. I think we're going to be really, really heavy. You touched on it. Tight ends and fullbacks are huge chess pieces. Absolutely. I think we're going to see a lot of that. And Christian will talk about this here real quickly. And a guy that I'm very excited to see, one big motherfucker playing tight end, by the way.
Been to like half the schools in fucking all of the FBS here. Eric Gilbert from Marietta, Georgia, the Blue Devils, bro. Marietta High School. He was the number one tight end out of his class, right? Number 10 player nationally, number 2 player in the state of Georgia. I know in the spring game he had some drops, right? He had some drops, and there was a couple of balls that were kind of, not really thrown in time with him. But telling you right now, I watched him play in some Georgia spring games. I've watched this kid play. He is a big physical son of a bitch. I mean, trust me, in the game environment, when he gets locked in, nobody can stop him. I mean, it's almost like watching Kyle Pitts. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Or it's like watching oh Jesus, dude. What's that guy playing for the Denver Nuggets right now? The big man. Jokic. It's like watching him. When he gets locked in, nobody can stop him.
Well, that's the thing with Gilbert, though, dude. He's so much bigger. Not to interrupt you, sorry, Christian. He's so much bigger than everybody else. He's athletic as fuck. I don't think we need to talk about his physical attributes and how athletic the kid is. But you're right. I was going to make his comparison. If I had to do a comp to him, is Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts was untouchable because he's a tall-ass wide receiver playing tight end. Linebacker can't cover him. This kid right here, Christian, I'm glad you brought him up because he is one of those big question marks for us. If he even is 80% of his potential, he's first team all Big Ten tight end easily. He's a freak. He's a fucking freak.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why allegedly, I'm just going to say allegedly a bunch of times when I say this, allegedly the thing that happened was while at Georgia, the thing is he started off at LSU, right? Then he was homesick. There were some things going on. He transferred, ended up at Florida for literally I think 2 weeks, and then left Florida, committed back to Georgia. When he was at Georgia, there were some rumors that came out that were alleged that he got a hold of some pretty bad stuff, right? And it pretty much messed him up for a little bit. And anyways, not to make a whole long-winded rant about it, that's kind of why he ended up sitting out, didn't really gain any of that. Kirby knew the athleticism, knew what this kid could be, and he kept sticking by him. So if Kirby stuck with him, obviously, for 2 years, I mean, that means he's pretty damn talented. So, they kind of build it off as there were some personal things going on, but I mean, that was a line thing. I think, again, the kid, he's up here at Nebraska. I mean, we're just 2 Georgia kids living in the Midwest, man. I mean, I can relate with him a little bit, It's not a whole hell of a lot to do other than play football and be fucking dominant, man.
Really? I think you've been dominant eating those cheeseburgers over at McDonald's, though. But hey, here we are. So no, you're exactly right, though, man. I mean, like I said, I think Nebraska's receiver core is solid. Children of the Corn, I do. I think it's going to be okay. They don't have a ton of depth. I think we're going to see some people emerge there in that position. But we're not going to throw the ball. I don't care. If people think we're going to be throwing the ball like we did the past few years as much, even if it's that short fucking slant bullshit and the bubble screen crap that I hated forever. I don't think you're going to see a lot of that. I mean, we're going to run that once in a while, but I think it's more RPO style. It's going to be a lot of running the football, man. And that's what I want to go back to, right? I think every Nebraska fan, I talked about this so many times at length on most of our Nebraska podcasts and stuff like that. But it's like, I think we're going back to some smash mouth football, fullback back there, 2 tight end sets, stuff like that. And that's what I personally want to fucking see. That's what I grew up with. That's the type of football I love to play. That's the type of football I love to watch. Christian, you got anything else here, big guy?
Yeah, I'll end this with a question for everybody who's still watching, and you, Chris. I mean, really, I know the easy answer here to this question, but which Nebraska running back finishes with the most yards this year? Is there somebody that could surprise us?
You know my favorite, Gabe Irving, baby. And I love myself some Grant, but I think it's Gabe Irving, dude. I am big on him this year. That was my preseason spring game MVP, I think, when we did that. He looked pretty good. He looked pretty good.
Right. Hold on a second. Let me get this pulled up here. Yeah.
Anthony Grant's going to be huge, man. He's really good too, man. He's got that cutback move that's like NFL style. But here's the thing, Christian. While you're pulling that up, I'm going to talk about this for a second. College football has evolved, just like NFL has. You remember the days like 15, 20 years ago, Christian, where you just had like one running back and like he was a guy that got like 35, 40 carries. Like seriously. That doesn't exist anymore unless you're Derrick Henry, and I'm going to throw the NFL out. Nobody does that anymore unless you're like Ibrahim from Minnesota last year. He would get 40 carries. He's very rare. It's like every fucking team now has like 2 starting running backs. You know what I'm saying? Like like they rotate almost series, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. They're not getting hit as many times. Their legs are more fresh when it comes fourth quarter, that kind of stuff. Especially if you want to be a running team, which I want Nebraska to finally fucking do. I think Grant and Irving this year is going to just have great years. And we got Johnson back there. We got tons of guys that can play back there. Nebraska's always recruited well at the running back position. This is no news to any Nebraska fan, but it's like I honestly think both of them are going to have great years. I don't think one is going to really like stand out to the other. I would like to see Gabe Irving was really highly recruited, but I think that it's really going to come down. If you got 2 really good running backs, dude, look at Michigan. I mean, I think they have 2 of the top 5 running backs on the same team, personally, with Edwards and Corum.
I think you guys have 3 running backs that could start at just about most programs in the Power 5. You got Rahmir Johnson, Grant, Gabe Irving.
Rahmir Johnson is literally I don't even want to use this word. Hopefully he's not listening, but like a poor man's like Wan'Dale Robinson, dude. He's the same guy, essentially. Super fast. I mean, plays basically can play that kind of a wing back, / slot receiver, can put him in the back. He's just super, super elusive. But yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah, I think for me, I would probably say, and Children of the Corn brings up a good thing about a field goal kicker. I'll get to that here in just one second. But it's tough. I think it's hard for me to go against Grant, but I think Irvin will probably end up getting a lot more of the snaps, right? Right now on this list, he is rated as the number 1 guy, and he's younger too. He's younger than all 3.
Oh yeah. He's the big. Grant was highly recruited. He got in a lot of trouble. I believe he was at like Florida State for a year or something like that, and he had to go JUCO. But Grant, I love Anthony Grant. He was my favorite player last year. It's just like
didn't Grant get in a little bit of trouble in the spring too? And spring practice.
That knocked him back. I think it was grades, participation in like class stuff. I think shit like that. I think, don't quote me on that, but no, Gabe Irving was highly, highly recruited. I mean, the kid, if you've seen him play, just even the spring game, he looked like electric. I think, again, like I just touched on, guys, I truly, truly think having a 1A and a 1B, dude, you have to have that in college football nowadays. That's kind of what it's kind of come to anymore with most programs, unless you got a guy like a fucking Saquon Barkley, which comes around once every 10 years, or a Derrick Henry at Alabama, or a Leonard Fournette at LSU, or I could name a bunch of guys at Le'Veon Bell at Michigan State. I mean, you could name a ton of those type of guys, but like it's pretty rare. You know what I mean? Nowadays it's almost become this 1A, 1B type thing, and actually it keeps both guys fresh until the fourth quarter. And I think that's what a lot of programs have gone to, man. You see it even at Bama. They do that a lot too now. You know, they had Jahmyr Gibbs and Brian Robinson the year before that. Like it's just they're very on-off type of thing. And like I think Nebraska's going to do that. Rule's no idiot. He had at Baylor, he had Antonio Gibson, who was like he's with the Redskins right now. He's pretty damn good running back there with Brian Robinson, which is funny. I just mentioned him, but yeah, I mean, he was a stud. But he also had another kid. I cannot think of the other guy he rotated with. You know, Gibson was highly drafted, but like that's what that's kind of what I see out of Nebraska this year running. And you're going to see Ramir Johnson, dude. You're going to see him.
Yeah.
It's not like he's not. I think third down situations, perfect. He can catch the fucking football, and you got to be able to do that. You know, just like college football is pretty much always, to me, seems like it's trying to keep up with the NFL, right? Or vice versa in coaching aspects. But I think that's, you know, you got to be able to catch the ball in the NFL as a running back. If you don't, you're probably not playing. You're probably not even on a fucking roster.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that I can say that I've seen about the Matt Rule era here at Nebraska thus far is, you know, you saw it with Casey Thompson. I mean, in a lot of ways, I feel like, right? If you're not out there playing, I mean, he's really business oriented. So maybe Grant, you know, missing that time, Matt Rule's like, look, I got Gabe Ervin. He looks good. Let's throw him in there.
Yep.
So, not to say that Anthony Grant's not a talented player and probably won't take some good snaps.
Oh, he's a stud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that is one thing I've noticed. I mean, it seemed like Casey Thompson knew pretty quickly he may not be the starter this year, and he transferred out pretty quick. So I don't think Matt Rule is fucking around this year, to say the least. You know, Children of the Corn says, along with the field goal kicker question here, right, because he'd asked a question here, when we get a field goal kicker that can make their damn field goals, because right now they're pissing me off. Along with that, we don't start making our field goals. Should we just go for it every time?
No, I don't think you should go for it every time to answer that question. No, I think last year kicking was a lot better. You guys got to admit the special team. I mean, as a Nebraska fan, was way better than the year before, which is not saying much because the year before that we were, I don't know how many games we lost on special teams. I'm not even going to go down that fucking road. It makes me cry. No, I think we'll be okay here. I honestly do. I know the spring game we played. Yeah, I remember the spring game, Children of the Corn. We had quite a few different kickers out there. I think Nebraska's just kind of tried to play everybody type of thing there. And I'm with you. Special teams are fucking huge. Ask Ohio State against Georgia, Christian. I mean, is that guy alive yet? That kicked that, missed that field goal?
I don't know, man. They said they tried to wake him up. They missed to the left.
That caught me off guard. That was funny. Yeah, no, no. That's my thing, though. The answer to this question, no, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay there. I honestly think we got, what's his name coming back? I can't even think of his name off the top of my head right now. I apologize, but
I got you.
No, yeah.
Great kid. Good city he's born into, too.
Yeah, of course. Atlanta, Georgia. Where all the wannabes grow up.
Players play, bro.
No, he's gonna be okay, dude. Last year he didn't have a bad season. Last year, I believe, 9-12. That's pretty fucking decent, actually. Yeah, he missed one from 52-2 from 40 to 49 yards. I'll take that. That 30 to 39 yards, though, you need to be money there. We're gonna be okay in the kicking. I actually surprised he asked that question. To be honest, with you, in the corner, I thought the kicking was much better last year. I know the spring game. You got to remember, if you're talking about the spring game, much different situation. We played like 3 or 4 kickers. They had on both sides of the ball there. They threw a bunch of people in there. Yeah, it wasn't pretty at times, but spring game, I think they just, hey, third to fourth string kicker, we're going to see if you can kick under pressure. And, some of those guys did miss. I definitely don't want to see us going for 2 every time. Field goals are pretty important. So are PATs. Christian, I'll kick it over to you.
I'm not a really big special teams guy, man. I'm going to be honest with you, but I will say this.
Wow. You really, you just want to go for 2 every fucking time?
Can't really necessarily say that.
What are you saying?
Ironically, people in my Facebook that I keep getting, recommended friends. This is one of those guys. Timmy Bleekrode, right?
Really?
We keep seeing him pop up. Mutual people I should add, right? So
really,
the more you know, right? No, I mean, the special team is certainly a very important part of the game. I know it sounds kind of ironic that I say that. I mean, look, I will be honest. I was not a kicker. That is a specialty through and through, and that is not part of my specialty. So that's
I was
not really Well, I know you were, right? You're an odd guy there. You're not Duckman.
No, I punted, kicked it. Jesus. Punted, kicked, fucking played wide receiver and played safety. No, it's not easy. It's not. I didn't even want to do it. I was just happened to be the best on my team, so we did it. And we kicked a lot of fucking PATs. It's not an easy job by any means. That's why I don't give kickers a ton of like hate all the time, because it's not something that's easy to do. But I will say this: at the college level, this is what you do. You've obviously excelled in this craft to get this far. This is what you do day in, day out. 2 years ago, the kicking was, I could have kicked better personally. 100% would have came in some of those games and would have made some more of those PATs than what we did. And I think special teams are huge. I think that if you get a good special teams unit, that can decide a close game pretty easily. Look at Ohio State, Georgia. I brought that up earlier. You watch a lot of games. It comes down to, you get a guy that can kick a 45, 50 yarder. I'm not saying Justin Tucker, like that guy's a freak, but I think it's huge. Punting, tackling on special teams. You got a returner, guy that's elusive. I think that's huge. I think it's huge. So I'm big into special teams. Obviously not as big. Christian thinks that they're just a bunch of scrubs running around out there with their diapers on their helmets, not giving a shit. But
I didn't say that at all. I just said I don't get it, man. You know what I mean? I'm underqualified to discuss it. I think I will say this.
McAfee on the show, dude. I will.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think to me this is one thing. And before we get into this, though, during the spring game, they look pretty good kicking the ball, right? Like, am I wrong?
They did. The problem is, I think he was talking about some of the other kickers. We did miss, like they missed a few field goals, but it wasn't like our starting kicker. It wasn't the guy that's going to be our starter this year from last year.
Can be bleak for us. All right. He says, how many passes and runs do you think we'll get over 40 and 50 yards this season?
Whew. I think Nebraska's going to be a more methodical, grind it. I don't think there's many passing plays over 40. I'll say a couple there, 3, 4, maybe. And I'll run wise, I honestly think maybe 3 or 4 is most. So I'll go less than 10. I know that sounds terrible.
I'll take the over.
Okay.
Take the over.
I'll hope to God you're right.
I think they'll have probably, oh God, yard plays. Be 15.
Okay.
Like 15 there. Jonah Corn also says I can give my thoughts on Georgia as well. Thank God.
No, he can't.
Finally,
no.
Somebody.
Why the fuck did anybody even bring up that fucking team? I don't want to fucking hear about it.
No, man. I think Georgia, and I've said this on a couple of other podcasts, I think that this is going to be an interesting year for them. I mean, on paper, they've got an easy schedule, but
you do.
I still think South Carolina and Tennessee, if I'm betting, and I'm going to bet those games, I'm going to take the underdog in South Carolina and Tennessee. They always play us very tough. Georgia's kind of breaking in a new quarterback. Yes, he looks good in the spring game. There's a lot of kind of, to me, I just think Georgia's going to have a really weird year this year. I think first and foremost, they're not going to win the national championship. I think that the best case scenario, right? I think the best case scenario is, well, Chris, we've talked about this. Statistically,
fucking wake up, Christian. You're winning 3 in a row. Come on. What kind of fucking Georgia fan are you if you're not talking about back to back to back? I was a Nebraska fan once in '97, and we didn't win back to back. But I was telling every motherfucker, and I was only like 12, that we're winning 3 in a row. What kind of fan are you?
A realist, right? I'm not a Disney dog, as they like to say, right? I'm
fucking guy, dude.
Like I said, I'm not a Disney dog, man. I think that they're going to probably have 2 or 3 losses this year, even with the weaker schedule. So that's just me. South Carolina, Tennessee, probably maybe Ole Miss. I don't know. I like Ole Miss this year, and we play them. So give me some Ole Miss in that. But I think again,
I don't know what you're talking about.
I think a couple years from now they're going to again. I think a couple years from now 2024 might be a different story, though.
Oh, is that the quarterback that comes in?
No. I just think it'll be Carson Beck's second year. I'm really big into second-year quarterbacks and stuff like that. He might have a little bit of a rough year this year getting acclimated as a full-time starter. I like second-year kind of guys, right? It's very hard when you take over for a program. first and foremost, it's really hard to three-peat. And then secondarily, it's, as the first-year starter, it's very, very tough. Especially in that conference.
No, I agree. I have to give you shit about Georgia, dude. I just, I don't know what it's ever probably going to feel like to win back-to-back again. So, like, I was just a young guy then. So, here I am still, reliving that dream, Christian. I just can't believe you're not more high on them, man. We need to do it. We haven't done a show in Georgia.
We've done one. It was very, very well. We did it very early on. Remember, like the very first episode we did it about Georgia and Nebraska.
Oh, but I wanted, season break.
Yeah, you want something updated, something new, a little new spice to it.
I keep thinking that as much as I'm trying to hype them up, so when they ultimately fail, that you're going to be crushed. But I just can't get you on that boat, man. As hard as I fucking try.
Joe in the corner here says, "Do you think turnovers under 10 for the season?"
No.
Or he's also meaning maybe 15, right? Maybe 15 under.
15 I could go with. 10, no, I don't. I mean,
we're
going to be running option football.
Yeah, I would say it's probably going to be closer to maybe 15.
I hope you're right.
15, 20. I don't think that's that's not going to be terrible. I mean, again, it just depends. If everybody stays healthy, it's a good shot. I mean, what I saw in the spring game, if the second, third, fourth string guys start having to play in these early games and some of these games, turnovers might be a little bit of a challenge. But again, they're young, so you can kind of.
Right. We did see a lot of fucking turnovers in that spring game, though. It was atrocious, to be honest. But I think we're going to have some issues right away. First couple of weeks, I think we're going to probably turn the ball over a little more than we possibly like. But if you said the big thing, injuries, if we don't have to put a backup quarterback, Jeff Sims starts the whole entire year, I think we'll be okay. I could see it under 15, but we're going to run the ball a lot. Quarterback, center exchange type of thing. You're going to see problems there sometimes too, even if you do turn the ball over once a game, every game. Shit, you got 13, 14 right there. So if we keep it under 15, I'll be happy. Perfectly happy with that.
I think this kind of brings us to a good little stopping point for right now, Chris. I mean, we're going to be back at this on Wednesday again here. So, but again, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, help the algorithm out there a little bit, get you your drinks freshened up over the weekend, and we'll see you guys back on Wednesday.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.